Welcome to In Good Company, where relationships drive results, with your host, Lisa Kilray. In each episode, we explore how great leaders build trust, inspire teams, and turn meaningful connections into real success.
Hi, I'm Lisa Kilray, host of In Good Company, where relationships drive results. Today's episode is sponsored by WSI eResults. At WSI, we help manufacturers and B2B organizations build the strategic foundation they need for AI-driven growth. Our work spans digital strategy and roadmaps, SEO, content development, and multi-channel digital programs designed to drive measurable bottom-line results. Recently, a client who started working with us a few years ago told me, "I'm so glad we began this journey with WSI when we did." And the reason why they said that is because they are now showing up in AI-generated searches through Google and the LLMs and getting leads throughout the world for their multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment. That early strategy is exactly why they're getting the results that they are getting now. To learn more, visit www.wsi-manufacturing-marketing.com. And now let's get into today's conversation. This episode really sits at the heart of what this show is about: how leadership, mentorship, and relationships drive careers and long-term impact, especially in complex, highly regulated industries like healthcare. Today, I'm joined by Chris Reese. Chris is a Senior VP of Sales at NeuroPace, where he leads commercial strategy and growth for a medical device company focused on improving the lives of people with drug-induced epilepsy through advanced neurostimulation technology. Previously, Chris served as U.S. VP of Sales for the ENT business at Medtronic, and over nearly 2 decades, he has held senior commercial leadership roles at companies including Boston Scientific and Nevro. In addition to his executive roles, Chris is deeply committed to mentorship, and leadership development through Evolve Your Success, a relationship-driven initiative focusing on advancing the next generation of medical sales professionals. Hi, Chris. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Lisa. You're too kind. Thank you for the intro.
It's great to have you here. So to start, you're currently part of the leadership team at NeuroPace. For listeners who are not familiar with your company, can you share what NeuroPace does and who you ultimately serve?
Of course. And as with most medical devices, ultimately, of course, we serve the patient, and we have that in mind at all times in order to get them the best of care. Specifically, what we do here at NeuroPace is we do a brain implant for epilepsy. And so prior to NeuroPace coming along, there were other implants, both for the vagus nerve as well as something called deep brain stimulation. And it kicks out electricity all day long to try to help these patients manage their epilepsy. This is specifically for patients that haven't been able to be helped with drugs, which the majority of patients can be. But for that 20, 30, and some studies will say 40% of patients out there that aren't regulated on drugs and don't have good seizure relief, neuromodulation is a phenomenal option for them, of which NeuroPace is now the most recent iteration of that. What makes it different is what's called a closed loop system. And so rather than just sending electricity to the brain, it's actually listening to the brain to see what patterns are there in order to disrupt those and hopefully stop a seizure before it comes on, utilizing less energy and some other benefits that the system has. So I've been here about 7 months now. It's been a very exciting ride and absolutely life-changing technology for patients.
Yeah, congratulations on the new position. And it does sound like a medical breakthrough for those people suffering from this disease and condition. I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling that something like that exists. So that's really awesome. And I look forward to hearing more about it. So NeuroPace operates at the intersection of advanced technology, clinical care, and patient outcomes. From your perspective, what makes this work especially meaningful or challenging compared to other roles you've held?
So I worked in some other industries prior to coming into medical device, and you've mentioned it a couple of times. It's a very highly regulated industry. So it's not as simple as, for example, you said, wow, it's amazing someone came up with this idea. Well, the idea existed for a while, but who is actually going to go out there, study the technology? First, you have to try it in animal implants, make sure that it works. Every single thing we do, for very good reason, has to include patient safety at the end of the goal. It has to be effective for them in order to come to market. It's
Absolutely.
huge amounts of investment. It's a lot of roadblocks and challenges. And when you're launched into the field, there's a lot of guide rules and rules you have to follow. Again, if you're a patient, it was a loved one of yours going in for a procedure, you'd want those rules to be followed. So they're in place for a very good reason. But it makes it challenging to operate. It's not as simple as with other industries where you have a great idea, you can move faster. New tools like AI and some other iterations have to be thought through an extra set of hoops, I would say, before it can come to market, making it challenging for any commercial leader to move fast and take advantage of different market opportunities that are out there.
Right, right. It's people's brains. I mean, there's a
Yes,
reason
it
why
is
you have
brain
to,
surgery.
yeah, that's why you got to jump through those hoops and make sure everything is perfect. So you work closely with physicians, healthcare systems, and internal teams. How would you describe your role day to day? And where do you spend most of your time as a sales leader today?
So it's evolved as my career has evolved. And so obviously as a sales rep, you're interacting right with the patient where it intersects with the physicians. You're in the operating room, you're driving those sales. As a frontline manager, you're dealing with all of the strategy coming out of the organization, and then you're working with your teams to try to deploy that. And it's a very challenging role because you're having to work through challenges that come from the field, and you're also having to deal with challenges that come from the home office. As a director, your role elevates a little bit more from there. And now as a vice president, it's a primarily strategic role, but you have to stay attached to what's happening in the field to make sure that the decisions that you're making are good ones. And so day to day, it's a lot of meetings, but still all the same responsibilities. Last week, I was in the field 5 days while also taking meetings in the afternoons, doing work at night. It's really balancing all the things that need to be done to make sure you have the right approach and strategy. You have a lot of team members. I've got about 100 now that I need to stay close to understand what their challenges are. And sometimes those are personal, sometimes those are professional, and you're dealing with all of those across the board. So just really balancing all the things from the top, from my CEO and the direction we're getting from the board, and making sure that that's emanated down to the field in a way that's actually tactical that they can perform on.
Okay, awesome. So looking back, what would you say the experiences are that best prepared you for stepping into senior sales leadership roles?
It's a good question. I would say, I was in the Marines for 4 years. And so leadership after a 4-year stint in any Marine Corps job, I think prepares you for leadership on some level. It's what they focus on primarily, no matter what your role is. So some core tenets of being a leader, leading from the front, these are things that you learn in an organization like that I think have carried me really, really well. I'm not going to ask anyone on my team to do something that I either haven't done or that I'm not willing to do myself. And I think that's one of the core tenets that you would appreciate in a leader. So that was a really good experience. But then also early on, I've had the good fortune to be a part of a lot of different startup organizations. And so here's NeuroPace still being in a bit of startup mode and transitioning into a more mature company. I've had the benefit of seeing that transition multiple times. Vertiflex, Nevro, you mentioned a few others, Vertos as well. And so watching those transitions and having the opportunity to work in small organizations, but then also large organizations like Boston Scientific and Medtronic, I think have really made that perspective a little easier to see where we've been, where we are today, and a little bit of where we're going as a leader, I think has been really helpful. It gives a lot of confidence in the decisions that we're making.
Right, right. Well, first of all, thank you for your service. And you definitely have a unique combination of experiences between the military, startups, small companies, large companies. So it sounds like you were uniquely prepared for this position you're in now. So as you mentioned, you've seen different companies, cultures, growth stages, and leadership styles. When you reflect on that journey, what lessons came early and which ones only became clear later to you?
So early, I think I recognized that it's all about the people. This is not necessarily a medical device business. It's not a regulatory and laws business. Ultimately, the success or failure I noticed early on came down to people. And when you're around good people, people that wanted to win, people that were willing to put their ego aside and look after each other, no different than what I experienced in the military, we were able to succeed. And so similar in the Marine Corps, you don't have the best weapons. In fact, everything I had in there had Army crossed out in black spray paint, and then it said Marines underneath it. It was all old equipment. People think they get the best weaponry out there. They don't. And that taught me that you don't necessarily need that in order to go to battle and win. What you need is really good people that are organized around them, and really have a spirit in order to win. What did I learn later on? Later in my career came things like organizational behavior, a lot of the lessons that you learn in a lot of traditional settings, things that come from organizations like the Challenger sale, and the evolution of what you start to learn in those organizations. So, later in life, the importance of having good organizations, good organizational behavior, good tools and resources, how to evaluate those. I think those are some of the lessons that came later that are still incredibly valuable. Once you have the right people in place, do they have the right products to sell? Do they have the right game plan? Do they have the right tools and processes? The importance of those, I don't think I totally appreciated when I was in small organizations, and I learned those at
Mhm.
Boston Scientific and Medtronic. They're there for a reason. We call it bureaucracy, and we don't tend to love it, especially as sales reps. I myself have the attention span of a small child sometimes. And so having to adhere to those plans wasn't
Right,
always one of my favorites, but you see the importance of those as a senior leader.
right.
And so my job, I think, is to incorporate those while never forgetting that there's people at the end of those, their families are on the line, there's patients that are going to be affected, and making sure that we're doing it the right way.
Right. So from your vantage point, what are the most underestimated challenges that sales leaders face in highly regulated, clinically driven industries like MedTech?
We touched on it a little bit. I mean, the world is moving very, very fast around us. How to incorporate that into these organizations, I think, is incredibly challenging, more so than it's been in previous years. And I think it's getting harder and harder. I'm getting calls from a lot of agencies out there that are working on some amazing technologies, great processes, but things, for example, like technology that'll record every single conversation, not always maybe one of the brightest moves in a highly regulated industry. You don't want every single word said in every interaction logged and then there to be, discoverable later. You wouldn't do that in banking. You wouldn't do that in med device. And so some of these tools, we're just not able to have listening devices on us at all times. We also don't want to track the representatives that we have out there. We're in a relationship business. And so it's not as transactional as going out, logging a sales call. We're not going to put an ankle brace on any of our team members and follow them through every interaction. It's just not quite how the industry works. And so being in something so heavily regulated, there's tools and resources out there I wish I could take advantage of. Some of them just haven't been vetted yet fully enough to be included in a heavily regulated industry. Hopefully they will one day. And when they do, how do we incorporate those? I think is a real challenge, because healthcare and manufacturing within healthcare isn't always as cutting edge as you would hope that it would be, given its regulated nature. And so every leader's got to determine, and every organization is currently determining, how do you bring these tools into a sales organization to help them compete more, make their lives easier, help us go faster, help us execute better. But it's a very challenging environment as things evolve. It can sometimes take years to incorporate some of these technologies. And what I'm finding is by the time we get them up and running and vetted through the legal department, through regulatory, we incorporate them, the whole world is shifted again, and you have to do it all over, leading to change management being consistent across the board.
Yeah. I mean, good ideas can happen quickly. Good ideas getting implemented in the medical field is probably a whole different ball game.
Very challenging.
I can see how that would be very challenging. So where do you often see the most friction, whether that's between sales and marketing, sales and clinical teams, or leadership in the field?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay.
We get there's a lot of tension out there, but I call it healthy tension. So there's tension between, I sit on the executive team, and so my counterparts are the head of finance, the head of marketing, the head of regulatory, the head of manufacturing. And so I think there's a healthy tension with every single one of those groups for different reasons. You look at finance, my job is to pay my reps as much money as I possibly can to attract the best talent into the organization. I like to throw amazing P Club and President's trips as an example. I like to throw amazing spiffs and throw awards and prizes. Well, there's a good reason why they don't just let me make those decisions in a vacuum, why there's some healthy tension with the finance department as we go to make those decisions and adhere to our budgets. We always want things to go faster in the field, but there's a reason why we need to get things, for example, our decks approved before they show them to a customer, right? It has to be the truth. It has to be something that we've studied. It has to be factual. And so those things need to be legally approved through the marketing team. And you can end up with a healthy tension there as the sales reps want to go faster. And some of the marketers need to make sure they're checking some boxes. And so all the way across the board, we want things done faster, cheaper. We want to lower prices. There's good reasons why we don't do that in the field. So there's a series of checks and balances. And then, of course, my team always, wonders what I'm up to behind the scenes, which is why it's important to stay front and center, because as you know, when I was a sales rep, I always assumed there was a wizard behind the curtain that was out to get me and, trying to nefariously inflate my quotas and things along those lines. And you come to find out that's not what's happening. You're just trying to run a good business, but explaining the why behind all the decisions sometimes can be a bit challenging and lead to some tension across the board. But I think all of those can be worked through.
Yep. So, but on the plus side, when these groups are aligned, what have you seen work particularly well?
Absolute magic. I was part of an organization called Vertiflex. It sold to Boston Scientific for over $800 million. It was a small implant that was meant for spinal cord stenosis. And that's a good example, I think, where just everything felt like it was in sync. The marketing department was a great partner to the field, but they didn't give us everything that we were asking for. They didn't always give it to us at the speed with which we wanted, but they explained the why behind it. And there was just a lot of trust in the system. I oftentimes go back to the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and you have to have that base layer of trust across the board. Not every organization is able to build that amount of trust. When we trust our finance partners, they can be amazing thought leaders to work through incredible problems. Running a business is challenging just in any enterprise. And so figuring out a pathway to try to get what you want done in a way that it is still profitable for the organization so we can continue to help more patients. When that's working well, it's absolute magic across the board. And so I'm very fortunate here. I've got phenomenal marketing partners, finance partners. Manufacturing is absolutely next level. And so you can feel that magic coming on. And I feel very blessed because you don't get that everywhere that you go.
Right. That's very true. So as you've progressed in your career, what leadership behaviors have you become less tolerant of? And what qualities do you value far more today than you did earlier on?
Yeah, so for my, I try to give a lot of leeway to the sales team. I know they're out there trying as hard as they absolutely can. But for my sales leaders, especially my frontline leaders, I'm pretty relentless. And, it's the same way I was trained. There's people's lives on the line. And so I think laziness is something that I've just lost all ability to tolerate. If you don't want to be a leader, then don't be a leader in an organization. I think that's okay. You can take a step back. You can always go back into a frontline role or an individual contributor role. But I think if you want to be a leader in any organization, it's not a job. It's truly a responsibility. And there's people's lives that are on the line. And ultimately, it affects the patients that are out there. And I think about my son or daughter going in for a procedure. Do I want to see dysfunction or disengagement when I reach out for help to an organization that may be putting an implant into my family member? You'd hope to see some empathy and hard work there. You don't care, let's be honest, when you show up for surgery, how bad a day the physician's been having or the nurse that's going to be helping you out.
Absolutely.
Or if they, broke up with their boyfriend or just something isn't going well. You want that surgery to go really well. And so it's a responsibility. I think we need to treat it as such. And so disengagement, not caring as much about what we're doing, laziness, these are just things that I don't think any of us should tolerate, and nobody should tolerate in me. I think my team doesn't care if I'm having a bad day. They need me to be there for them when I need to be there, and they should be unrelenting when it comes to that, in my opinion.
Right. Very true. So how have relationships, mentors, peers, or even difficult managers shaped the way you lead today?
Oh, difficult managers. We all had those.
Yeah.
My mentors, it's been a game changer for me. And so I'm a kid from Los Angeles, California. Didn't have, the most robust upbringing, we'll say. Didn't have as much direction as I wish I would have had. And, I got some of that mentorship starting in the Marine Corps to get me going down the right path. People that were looking after me at just the right moments in my life and my career. I have zero doubt that that's what's led me to have the life that I have now, to have the career options that I have now. I stand on the shoulders of giants that have come before me and really helped me see perspective for what's out there that I didn't have any perspective on prior to going into those roles. And so I've been incredibly blessed when it comes to phenomenal mentors, great bosses, people looking after me. I have a phenomenal boss now. My last organization, I had a phenomenal boss. who was, were willing to challenge me in the ways that I needed to be challenged, met me where I was, and then brought me along for the journey in a way that really allowed me to succeed and also fail under the right circumstances with some protection, and gave me the confidence to go out and try new things. So if I look back on my career and wonder why I've been able to achieve some level of success in medical device, there's no doubt in my mind it comes down to mentorship and people really
Yep.
looking after me when I needed it most.
Yep. That's the name of the show. In Good Company. So, Chris, thank you so much for a great conversation. We're not done yet. I really appreciate you sharing your experiences and perspective. But before we do wrap up, where is the best place for people to learn more about NeuroPace?
They can go to www.neuropace.com and see a nice rundown on the systems. They can reach out to one of us. You can reach me on LinkedIn at Chris Reese at NeuroPace. And there's a lot of information there. We'd be happy to share. If you know someone who has epilepsy and needs help, we absolutely are very passionate about ensuring they get the best of care, regardless of what device or organization they go with.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. We'll be sure to include those links in our show notes. I do have a few more questions for you. You're involved in an initiative called Evolve Your Success. For listeners who may not be familiar, can you briefly share what it is and the role you play in it?
Evolve Your Success is, which one is Evolve Your Success? Can you remind me?
Yeah, it's the helping sales professionals find jobs.
Yes. So that was originally called the Boost program. The Boost program was designed in order to get professionals that were interested in medical device. Something we run into quite often is people that are interested in finding a pathway into this career. So Boost was designed to get folks into this career. It can be very challenging to find your way into a medical device career. It's not something people study in high school or in college. And so how do you get started is something that's very challenging, but there's a need for incredible talent to come into these organizations. And there's a lot of folks out there looking to get started in their career. And so Boost was designed to connect the two dots there. Anyone who's interested in getting a career going in medical device can reach out. And then there's different clubs and organizations where we pull together open job openings. For some reason, it's hard for individuals to find the connection between those two. And there's a lot of organizations out there willing to coach and mentor folks right from off the street into becoming a great medical device rep. Other organizations, such as NeuroPace as an example, because it is brain surgery, you oftentimes need previous experience in order to become a sales rep there. And so you see those challenges with people reaching out, trying to find where the openings are, but there's plenty of openings out there for entry-level folks. And so Boost is designed to boost folks into getting into those careers and connect the dots between employers looking to hire and train those individuals and people looking for those jobs. And so there's a lot of people from different backgrounds, college athletes, junior military officers, and other career paths that are interested in a career in medical device. Boost is designed to connect those.
It sounds like a great program. So is that a NeuroPace program, or is that a organization program that's kind of industry-wide that you got involved in?
So that one's agnostic. We started it when we were at Boston Scientific, and so
Okay.
they still run it, and happy to connect anybody who's interested with the people running that organization now.
Before we officially close, I'd like to end with a reflective question. When you look back on your career, who is the one leader who had a lasting impact on how you lead today? And what's the most important lesson you took from the way they showed up?
So I referenced it a bit, but I'd say the one leader that really started to turn me into thinking more and more about becoming a good leader myself was a leader named Sergeant Thomas that I had in the Marine Corps. Took me under his wing, a kid from off the streets in Los Angeles without a lot of direction in life and wasn't sure where I was going to go. What I took from that, more than anything else, is that it is about the people. So I referenced that a little bit. And making sure that you're taking care of the folks under your command. I saw what he went through to make sure that the people around him were taken care of, and the sacrifices that he had to make as a leader, but what it meant to him and what it meant to the people around them. And what it meant to me in my life, it absolutely let me know that regardless of what I needed to do as a leader to take care of the folks in my command, I had to make sure that was done. And so that's where it started. And I'd say, hopefully I carry some of those lessons still with me into the modern day and do it still here in the corporate world. and look after the people that are most important, which are the people that I lead.
That's an awesome story. Those are exactly the kinds of leaders and stories we love highlighting on In Good Company. Chris, thank you for ending on that note, for such a thoughtful conversation today. It's been a pleasure having you here today, and I truly appreciate you sharing your insights and experiences. Call out to our listeners who are joining today. If you are enjoying these conversations, I encourage you to also check out recent episodes with Dean E. Carter, who is CEO for Instill.ai, and Dan Letourneau, president of Pure Air Production Solutions, who doubled his company's revenue since he started leading his company. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you again, Chris.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to In Good Company, where relationships drive results, with Lisa Kilray. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay connected and keep building relationships that drive results.